Hello, my fellow YouTubers and health conscious people around the world. Today, I'm going to talk about human diet evolution and its impact on our health. More precisely, carbohydrates, processed foods with high fructose corn syrup, and seed oils. But before I go into the details, a word of disclaimer. The information I'll be sharing is strictly general information purpose only, and don't use this as a medical advice, and there's no patient doctor relationship is shared as a result. The use of the information is strictly at user's own discretion, and this information shouldn't substitute medical advice or diagnostics or treatment. So, before I jump into the topic, we know a lot about computers. We have built rockets, we have sent human beings to the moon, we are in the process of sending humans to Mars. We have developed new technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, a lot more. But we don't know much about our own human body, which we live in day to day basis. Why is that? So this is an effort to understand how a body works, what is the right fuel, how does it self feel? Because body is very intelligent. You given a right nutrition, it will heal, it will give you energy, it can sustain for a while, and you feel much better. So without much ado, let's get into it. For millions of years, we were we were hunter gatherers, eating mostly animal food, starchy food, berries, and nuts, and these are all carbohydrates except for animal foods. We were eating, most importantly, we were eating seasonally, which means during summer season, we used to hunt, eat, and store the energy as fat, and during the winters, when the food is scarcity, we are fasting and burning fat. However, in the last couple of thousand years, we started doing agriculture, farming, we became more intelligent, domesticated animals to the point we are manufacturing food such as processed food, seed oils, flours, artificial meats, we are making it now. Now, can you see the correlation between all the foods that we are making versus naturally available that we used to eat back in the days, to the point in the last 50 to 100 years, we were manufacturing seed oils, carbohydrates, you name it, flours, we depleted of all the nutrition. And as a result, we are where we are. Um, so here is the quick overview of how the food has evolved from eating ancient diet to eating more grains, depleted of all nutritions, manufactured oils like seed oils, canola oils, sunflower oil, you name it. All the manufactured oils are really atherosclerosis, except for the fats like avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil. These are all healthy saturated fats, and animal fat is also good. And sugars are really bad. But the consumption of the bad stuff is going over a period of time. We didn't know. Um, and as you can see, all the bad oils are all manufactured fats, flours and cereal products, and sugars. So let's talk about macronutrients. At a high level, humans eat either carbs, all the foods that humans eat, either they fall in carbs, protein, or fats. And there are some exceptions like fibers and alcohol. They are treated as, fiber is a complex carbohydrates. Alcohol has its own entity, which is not healthy anyway. Um, as you can see, the most of the carbs are either in the form of rice, pasta, bread, all the fruits, vegetables, whole foods, whatnot. And proteins are, healthy proteins are really eggs, fish, salmon, dairy, whatnot. So now, in the last couple of years, USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, has recommended a food pyramid, which has been prevalent, and everybody in the world follows this pyramid. As you can see, This pyramid is actually the root of all the problems mostly, because the recommendation was you should have, take at least big chunk, 40 to 50% of your food should come from carbohydrates. Next is vegetables, fats and meats, and last is oil. But it was even bad before this. But I think this is the root of the problem, where the people are eating a lot of carbohydrates over a period of time and thinking that it is healthy, but in fact it is causing a lot of issues, which I will explain in my carbohydrate metabolism. So let's talk about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are divided into simple and complex carbs. Simple carbs are monosaccharides, disaccharides. Complex are polysaccharides. Monosaccharides include glucose, fructose, and galactose. Glucose is basically all the food that we eat, like carbohydrates, rice, pasta, bread. They all gets converted into glucose in a digestible form. That is the energy form. Whereas fructose is mostly in the fruits, and maltose, lactose, and sucrose is a combination of glucose and fructose. Like sugar is a pure sucrose. It's a combination of glucose and fructose, 50% glucose, 50% fructose. Um, and then you have polysaccharides, which are starchy foods such as potatoes, rice, you name it, fibery foods. And glycogen is a complex, glycogen is a stored form of energy, which is a glucose, which I'll explain shortly. Um, of all these sugars, fructose is the most, if you consume high quantity, it's mostly dangerous. People thought that, eating fruit is healthy, but whole foods eating is good. But if you consume fruits in its depleted of fiber, it is mostly dangerous. I'll explain it more, because liver is the only organ in the body that metabolizes fructose, and the liver converts in excess to all the fructose to fats such as triglycerides and cholesterol. And also excess sugar also body converts to fructose, which I'll explain shortly. Here is the animal and plant food chain link here, how we have coexisted all along. At the bottom of the food chain is the plants. Plants are the ones which generates the nutrition for us independently, by taking the carbohydrates that we exhale and using the sun's energy, and it takes the nutrients from the soil like nitrogen and magnesium, potassium, creates a carbohydrates molecule, which is a combination of carbon dioxide and water molecules, 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of hydrogen and water. That becomes a carbohydrates, which is C6H12O6. Um, and the herbivores consume these plants, and they have more sugar in the body by consuming these plants carbohydrates. Carnivore eat these herbivore animals and generate more fat. So omnivore, which are basically they can eat herbivore and carnivore, and they eat sugars as well as fats at the molecular level, and they get more energy. Like we are omnivore, we eat plants, we eat meat as well, and that way we get more energy. So we got to be cognizant about what is a healthy food when we consume in this form. So here is the just what I explained. So we consume um, we consume oxygen, and then we metabolize, and we also consume carbohydrates, fats, and protein. Once we consume carbohydrates, the end product of the metabolism is we exhale carbon dioxide, and we get energy eating the carbohydrates, and we excrete water. So while we take carbohydrates and oxygens, intake, and then we metabolize and release carbon dioxide, energy, which is an ATP that we generate by eating these carbohydrates, and excrete water. So here is the how do we metabolize? We talk about carbohydrates. Let's talk about what is the carbohydrates, how we generate energy. Is in excess, does it cause any issues, health issues for us? Yes, indeed. Let's talk about it. In fact, when I talk about macronutrients, of all the macronutrients, there are essential proteins, essential fats, but there are no essential carbohydrates. So which we'll talk more about it. So in this here, when we eat any carbohydrates food like rice, pasta, or bread, the half the digestion of the food is in happens in our mouth with amylase, enzyme, and then remaining digestion happens in our stomach. The end product is the energy that we eat that our body generates, which is glycogen, right? So there are multiple processes how we generate energy. One is aerobic glycolysis, which is shown in here. As we consume glucose with the help of oxygen, I don't want to go through all the details. So, we create pyruvate as part of the pyruvate, and then TCA cycle, electronic transport chain, we generate 36 units of ATP. So that is common glycolysis, aerobic glycolysis. Now, we have anaerobic glycolysis when there is lack of oxygen. This happens when you do exercise, like when you're not able to breathe. What the body does, it's so intelligent. While it is converting the glucose to energy, lack of oxygen, it pyruvates, and then it creates a lactate. Lactate is created and stored in muscles, right? The same thing happens in blood glucose. Blood cells doesn't have any mitochondria, because the Krebs cycle is only exists in mitochondria. Lack of that, actually, the bloods in the blood, we actually create lactate. So this lactate is a stored energy which will consume later when there is enough oxygen. So that is anaerobic glycolysis, right? Lack of oxygen, it creates a lactate and stores that as an energy for the later consumption. Now, the next one is glycogenesis. So, glycogen is a stored form of glucose. So, as we consume food, some glycogen is the food gets converted to glycogen, and that glycogen is stored in liver and muscles. 100 grams of glycogen is stored in liver. 100 grams of glycogen is stored in 400 grams of glycogen is stored in muscles. The rest of the glycogen, it gets converted to fats, which is a de novo lipogenesis, which we'll talk later. Um, Now there is a blood sugar also. Blood sugar level is 4 grams. The body uses that to supply the energy to the brain mostly. Brain continuously need either glucose or ketones, which we'll talk a little bit later. So there is a 4 grams of glucose that body maintains all the time. For that, it uses insulin and glucagon to regulate that sugar levels, because excess sugar levels in our blood is very dangerous. So that's why we have these hormones that actually regulate the glucose levels. Now let's talk about um, you know consuming in the topics I mentioned, like aerobic glycolysis, anaerobic glycolysis, glucogenesis. This is through the fed state. When we are eating, this is the process that happens. But now when you are fasting, one of the things that the body does is glucogenolysis. Lysis means breaking down of energy. So in this case, glycogen that is stored in liver, muscles, it gets uh, burnt and consumed as glucose, right? Once it comes to glucose, then the body goes through this oxygen, pyruvate, acetyl-CoA, and the Krebs cycle, we get energy. Now, the other form that happens in terms of when you fast is the gluconeogenesis, that is creation of new glycogen. right? It's very interesting. The fats we have eaten, the amino acids, proteins, and the lactate that we just talked about, these are all stored energy. The body will convert these into glucose if needed. This happens in the fasted state for prolonged fasting. When you deplete your glycogens, the body will actually tap into your fats first and then protein if you consume enough. So the last one is de novo lipogenesis. This is bit, you know, the body excess glucose that you have, liver converts that excess glucose into fats, which is triglycerides. It also converts to cholesterol. These are fats that the body is so intelligent that excess energy is converted into fat because fat is the most efficient way of storing the energy. When it comes to macronutrients, there are of the three, um, proteins and carbohydrates are the energy. They provide energy to our body. Protein is a structure. Protein builds the structure for our body. Um, Sorry, I will repeat again. Of all the macronutrients, carbs and fats are the energy, and the protein builds the structure for our body. Fats are also used to create membranes for the cells as well. But overall, we have two forms of energy, that is glucose and fats. So let's talk about carbohydrates metabolism a little bit deeper. As I mentioned, the body always maintains 4 to 5 grams of sugar, which is like a size of a teaspoon, in the blood. Any excess, like excess of sugar, it is very dangerous. So that's why insulin regulates. And there is a glucagon also. Insulin, glucagon, they act as a yin and yang, right? So any excess of 4 grams, body will stimulate insulin, pancreas stimulate insulin. And then insulin is a storage hormone, and the higher the glucose level, higher the insulin secretes. And then the goal of the insulin is to remove the excess blood sugar in your body, right? Its goal is to bring it down to 4 grams. As you can see, I've shared some different foods and their content of number of spoons of sugar, that will induce in our blood. It's very, a slice of bread, the body will create up to 10 spoons of sugar. That's how dangerous these carbohydrates are in excess, right? In um, in balanced quantity, it's good, but it is when you consume more, that's when the body goes through, um, in a fashion that it needs to control the sugar levels. So here is the different hormones involved in the carbohydrates metabolism. As I mentioned, the pancreas secretes when there is when after you eat a meal, carbohydrate meal, you know the the food gets converted to glycogen, and then in the excess of glycogen in the blood, the pancreas secrete insulin. The insulin's job is to reduce the sugar level, and as the sugar goes down, and if the body senses that you have low blood sugar, the another hormone called glucagon is released. Glucagon is mainly to stimulate, burn the glycogen and generate more sugar into your body. This glycogen exists in liver. As I mentioned, there's 100 grams of glycogen available in the liver. So liver has a way to generate sugar, and also it will tap into muscles if needed. When you exercise, most of your energy is coming from the muscles, and that is like we have up to 300 to 400 grams of glycogen in our muscles. So body stores this, maintains this balance all the time. In excess of these sugar levels, it always converts to fat, which is a stored energy, which body will consume in the later part of the time when you are doing fasting. When there is no incoming food, then the body will tap into this fat, assuming that your insulin levels are normal, right? So here, the high levels of glucose and as a result insulin blocks fat oxidation. This is a little bit complex. This is actually a view of mitochondria of a cell. As you have seen glycolysis, through the glycolysis, you get energy, and the excess energy is converted into fat acid synthesis through a process called de novo lipogenesis. Now, when this happens, the body is not tapping into a fat. As a result, you're not burning the fat. When you're in fed state, this is what happens. Glycogens are created, excess sugar or energy is converted into fatty acids, which is triglycerides, which floats in your body and then ultimately stores in your adipose tissues, right? Um, so this is one of the reasons it is not a good idea to exercise immediately after you eat, because the body is, it goes through a lot of process, especially when it does a conversion to a fat through de novo lipogenesis. It is a very expensive process, and if it is a high carb meal, you feel very lethargic and tired, and that is mainly because insulin kicks in. It is basically trying to remove the glucose from your blood sugar levels, and that's when you feel lethargic. And there is an insulin spikes happens. These are roller coaster ride that happens with high sugar foods, because as the insulin goes up, glucose level goes down. Now as the glucose goes down, now glucagon kicks in, and you also feel immediately hungry again. You want to eat more. So this is what happens when you eat carbohydrates. It actually triggers in your body to eat more carbs. And in fact, eating carb is a it's an addiction. Carbs cause to eat more carbs and more frequently, and you feel more hungry. At the same time, the body is storing all that excess energy into fat, right? So this excess energy and its toxicity causes insulin resistance. How? Um, you need insulin to every cells in our body responds to insulin. So as energy like fat and glucose goes to nearby cell, the insulin is used to trigger to open the cell channel so that glucose and fat goes into the cell and we get energy as ATP. But brain doesn't need insulin. Blood-brain barrier doesn't need insulin for the glucose to go into the brain cells. That's why the body maintains this 4 grams of blood sugar level so that we get a constant energy to our brain cells. And the only two organs in our body that doesn't need any insulin is brain and the red blood cells. Rest of our body cells need insulin. So this is the only reason body maintains that 4 grams of sugar levels. The rest of them needs insulin to metabolize and get energy. Now the ectopic fat, let's talk about it. So the people thought eating fat we gain more fat. It's actually wrong. There's a myth. The reality is the more fat you eat, you lose fat, body fat. But the condition there is you should not eat. You should reduce your carbohydrates intake. The reason being, the lesser carbohydrates means less glucose. Less glucose means low insulin, and low insulin means the body will tap into fats for energy consumption. In case of high glucose, high energy from carbohydrates, the body generates excess insulin, which is a storage hormone, and its job is to store, including the fats, carbohydrates, whatnot. So this storage of excess fat is causing, overflow of fat in our organs, which is called ectopic fat. The body is continuously storing energy in terms of fat. If you eat more carbs more frequently, like 6 times a day, 7 times a day, eating carbs and sugars is the most dangerous way to lose your health, right? So this filling of fat across the organs, right from subcutaneous fat and to visceral fat, that's where slowly your body converts to insulin resistance. What insulin resistance is, over what used to take 1 spoon of insulin to, control 1 spoon of sugar, over a period of time of 5, 10 years, as you're consuming more carbohydrates, you may need 10 spoons of insulin for 1 spoon of sugar. So after 10, 20 years, you may need more insulin to control the same level of 1 teaspoon of sugar. So this is happening because your body is not able to cope with the excess energy that you're pushing into the cells. As a result, the cells will say, I can't take this energy, and they become insulin resistant. That means they're not able to respond to insulin. As a result, there is more sugar in the blood versus in the cells where it's supposed to be. That is classic insulin resistance. Now, liver has to deal with that excess energy. What it does is it converts to fat, and then that excess fat goes into all other organs. That's how you get a visceral fat. And that is where all the atherosclerosis happens, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome. So, obesity is a result of excess energy consumption, which ultimately leads to metabolic syndrome, which I just mentioned. That excess flow of fat goes into your organ fats, and then it reduces the efficiency of those organs like liver, pancreas. Liver does a lot of functions in our body. Distribution of energy, digestion, metabolism of macronutrients, all that functions will be destabilized, and the efficiency of liver organ as well as pancreas will be reduced. And not only that, this excess glucose in our body also causes what we call glycation in our blood. It's like sticky substance, which is triglycerides, which makes the arteries lose its glycation, and then it's kind of a rusting of the arterial walls over a period of time. That is a result of glycocalyx. Glycocalyx is it's a layer on the arteries, and as it interacts with the um, glycated blood molecule, we lose the glycocalyx. This glycocalyx is responsible for nitric oxide generation that actually dilates the blood vessels so that blood flows smoothly. So excess blood actually causes the loss of glycocalyx, as well as it will also cause blood pressure issues, all kinds of insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome issues. um, so basically, energy toxicity is nothing but metabolic syndrome, which is nothing but insulin resistance. That is the root of all issues. Like, it starts with the insulin. People think that, oh, you know what, I need to control blood glucose. No, actually, the root of the issue is insulin, right? Insulin is start raising, but we don't see it until we get a diabetic. But it's too late by the time you become a diabetic, because insulin is rising continuously, and we don't have tools to monitor the levels of insulin. We have glucose continuous glucose monitors to monitor our blood, but we don't have any monitoring tools to monitor our insulin. But if had we known this, we could have tested the insulin at a very young age, and we could take a reversal action to reduce the insulin level. Reduce the insulin level means reducing the carbohydrates and glucose. Well, in summary, what I suggest is cut all processed foods that has high fructose corn syrup, which is the most atherosclerosis to our body. Cut all foods that come in cans, wrappers and boxes with barcodes, because these are all processed food that we should avoid. Cut all sugars and non-sugar sodas. Cut all seed oils such as corn oil, sunflower oil, canola oil. These are all manufactured oils that humans have never eaten these kinds of food. And all of a sudden, when we are eating, the body is not able to cope up with, and we get inflammation. Usually, seed oils in our body stays for at least 2 years to clean up. Reduce high starchy food intakes such as rice, potatoes, flour, bread, because all these have a lot of starch in it. And starch is more dangerous than sugar, because a glycogen molecule of starch has more sugar than a sugar molecule. Avoid snacks between the meals. The reason being, if you pay attention to this video, you probably understood that the excess insulin is the cause of a lot of issues. That's why it's called insulin resistance. If you keep on eating, snacking in between the meals, your insulin is stayed up all the time. When the insulin is up, you won't be able to burn your fat, and and no matter if you do exercise or whatnot, you won't be able to retrieve the fat because insulin is causing your body to not to burn the fat. Avoid deep fried foods such as french fries and trans foods. These are very, very dangerous because they cause inflammation in our body over a period of time. Guys, hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to share more information in my next video. And my next video will be more talking about carbohydrates and in details about, what are the good carbohydrates, what are the bad carbohydrates, how to deal with it. Thank you so much, and hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you in the next video. Please subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this video. Thank you.